does it seem as if some people have a thriving relationship with God while other people seem to be stagnant? Why does it seem as if some people's spiritual growth continues to progress and it's as if some people just remain on the same point of their lives year by year or day by day? One of the reasons why those kind of things may occur is as a result of the manner in which they have encountered Christ. A lot of people, when you ask them now, they do not even remember what the experience was like when they first met with Christ. But the Bible has shown that it is not possible for you to encounter Christ and you will not be able to have a good testimony of it. So the testimony of your encounter experience will determine the depth to which your spiritual journey will thrive in God's presence. And so in this video, I'll be talking to us about the steps through which we encounter God. So I encourage you to stick around so that we can together explore the scriptures and identify those ways that would enable that we have a long-lasting encounter in God's presence. Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time of seeing my face, I want to welcome you to this channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. On this channel, all I do here is to share my knowledge in personal and character development, using the Bible, using book excerpts, using life lessons, so that you yourself can become a better person, and together we can all make the world a better place. If you're a returning subscriber, I want to say thank you so much for subscribing, and I appreciate you. Please do well to like and also to share this video to some of your friends. In this video, I'll be talking to us about the steps to encountering God. The nature of the natural man by itself is one that does not want to follow God. Is one that does not want to submit to God, nor even try to live in accordance with the will of God. The natural nature of man is always defiant to the will of God. Until something else counteracts that nature, man cannot by themselves submit to following God. And that is the reason why it looks as if it can be very difficult to follow God sometimes. And then you see that after some certain number of years, some people are thriving while others are not. The reason is because we need to check again, how did they encounter God? How did they meet with Him? What was their entry point into the journey of faith? If the entry point into the journey of faith was not correct, definitely they will not be able to have a long-lasting experience. Having an experience with God is largely dependent on the encounter that we have with Him. So just like I said, no one was born to be automatically a friend of God. No human being on earth. Since the time of the fall, of man, there is no other human being that has been born just to be automatically friendly and loving with God. The nature that they bear, as from the time of their birth, does not have anything to do with God. And it takes a process for us to be able to retrace our steps and begin to enjoy the presence of God in the way that He designed us to be. And that process is what we actually call an encounter. So what do we say an encounter is? An encounter by definition is a sudden or an accidental meeting, a meeting that was not planned for. As you are going in the journey of life and you are just minding your own business, there's something that you were not thinking about, something that you probably were not thinking about, counteracts the way you have been programming yourself, the way you have been planning your life, the way you have scheduled your day to go and all of that. So, when you are walking and you say you encountered something, you encountered an obstacle, you did not desire that obstacle, but it came anyway and it was an accident, right? And it was something that counteracted your intentional or your planned, scheduled activity. So an encounter is an accidental meeting that was not pre-planned or anticipated, but occurred during the course of the journey. So when we bring that back into the journey of faith, we could say that an encounter is to experience God in an unexpected way. That is an encounter. There are many people in the scriptures who have encountered God in an unexpected way. They were doing some things the way they knew how to, and then suddenly it was as if, bam, God just showed up without their pre-planned or their pre-knowledge, their anticipation. They were just carrying on in the way they knew how to. So, generally speaking, when we define an encounter, we would say that an encounter is an experience of God that has nothing to do with our own personal plan, that was orchestrated by the divine, just so that we'll be able to retrace our steps and follow the pathway of the divine. So for us to say that an encounter has occurred, it means that that encounter actually has counteracted upon the way we have been living our lives. I've seen Christians who have said that, they make statements such as that is the way I am, that is who I've been, the way they've been for several years is the way they still want to continue to be even today, even now that they claim to be children of God. The reason why you can be speaking in that kind of language is because you do not understand that when an encounter happens to you, it changes your beliefs, it changes your opinion, it changes a lot of things about you, different from what you used to be. So if you have been set in a particular way and you are very rigid about life, when you encounter God, one of the things He begins to do is to melt all of those rigidity in you so that you can flow in tune with His own plans, with His own intention, with His own beliefs, with His own system of doing things. So if you are still holding on to the way you do your things prior to now, and you are thinking yourself to be a child of God, we need to be able to ask you again whether indeed you have actually encountered God. There are several examples in the scriptures, but one of the examples I'll be talking to us specifically about today is the example of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus' story is one of those kind of stories that begins to outline for us what an encounter typically looks like. And I'll be using the story of Zacchaeus to explain to us some of the steps that we will need to go through when we are going to have an encounter, a long-lasting encounter. So if we look at the story of Zacchaeus, in Luke chapter 19, the Bible told us about this man called Zacchaeus. He was a rich man and he was also a chief ruler, a chief tax ruler. So he was involved in a lot of activities when it comes to maybe custom related activities and taxes of people and what have you. And he was a chief. So it means that he had a lot of people under him. And the Bible now told us in the verse 1 of that Luke chapter 19 how he desired, there was something in his heart. He must have been hearing about Jesus before now, and he felt that he wanted to see Jesus. The Bible said he sought to see Jesus. So the first step to having an encounter is that there is a hunger in your heart. The Bible told us when Jesus was talking about the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus said that blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. So the first secret to having a true and long-lasting encounter is that you desire it, you hunger for it, you are seeking God genuinely from the bottom of your heart. That was one example that we saw in the life of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was intentional about his desire to see the Lord. He had been hearing about him and he told himself, I want to seek him, I want to find him, I want to know who this man Jesus is. He may not have been looking for anything beyond just being able to identify Jesus, but that hunger was in his heart. And based on that hunger, other things started to take shape over the life of Zacchaeus until he fulfilled purpose and actually met with Christ. That's our first step to encountering Christ, a heart that hungers and thirsts for the Lord. So do you have one? Do you have a hunger that thirsts for the Lord? Do you have a heart that thirsts for the Lord? Do you have a heart that hungers for the Lord? Or you just, approach life fleetingly. Anytime you can pray is when you pray. Anytime you can interact with Him is when you do it. Or you are genuinely interested in seeking the Lord? You need to be able to answer that question if you want to have a true and long-lasting encounter. The second thing is that you must be separated from the crowd. For Zacchaeus to be able to encounter Jesus, he needed to be separated from the crowd. He moved away completely from the crowd and he went on top of a tree so that he'll be able to sight Jesus. He'll be able to see him as he's approaching and he'll be able to encounter him properly. Are you still in the crowd and you are looking to encounter Jesus? You must be separated. The Bible said in John chapter 2 verse 24 that Jesus would not commit himself to the crowd because he knew what was in man. He knew what was in them. He knows those who are desirous of him. He knows those who are seeking Him because of testimonies, because of miracles, and He knows those who are deliberately or intentionally hungry for Him. So if you want to have a genuine encounter with Jesus, then you must be separated from the crowd. You cannot mingle up with the crowd and expect to be able to see Him. Just go through your scriptures. You will discover that most people who encountered Jesus, they did so on a lonely journey. You must go to a place of solitude. You must go to a place of separation. In my last video, I talked about the need for stillness and separation so that you can relate with God. That was talking about the experience of Jesus. Even Jesus, while He was on earth, needed to create that time so that He can see God better. If you are looking to see God, then you must separate yourself from the crowd. The third thing that you need to do to be able to encounter God is that you must take advantage of the grace of God. The grace of God is always available. In fact, the Bible says it is sufficient. It was saying that my grace is sufficient for you. And that is the absolute truth. The grace is always available. But are you taking advantage of it? In the case of Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus climbed the tree so that he'll be able to see Jesus. And he used that as an avenue to be able to break all of his barriers, all of his limitations. He was a short man and he was limited by the virtue of the fact that he could not see Jesus in the midst of the crowd. He needed something that was elevated, something that will elevate him to be able to see Jesus. That is grace. That is the workings of grace. Grace will elevate you beyond your normal capacity. It's a barrier breaker, a protocol breaker. That is what grace does. It gives you advantage beyond your limitation. Take advantage of it to encounter Jesus. Anytime He comes for you, He's not coming empty-handed. There is grace in that scenario, that situation. Don't give excuses. Don't try to justify yourself. Don't try to do any of those things. Just take advantage of His grace. It's always available and it is sufficient for you wherever and whenever He meets with you. That you must be willing and ready to come down from your high horse, from that level, your elevated position. If you look at the story of Zacchaeus again, you will see that Zacchaeus was a wealthy man and also he was a man of authority. And he was also a man that was not so very much loved in the society. When people see Zacchaeus, what they see is corruption. What they see is somebody who is going to bully by virtue of the authority vested upon them. What they see is somebody is going to take more than he's supposed to take from them. That is who they see. And they labeled him a sinner. So, but despite the fact that he was that kind of person, when Jesus got to the tree and then called unto him and said, Zacchaeus, come down, for today I must dine in your house. What did Zacchaeus do? Immediately he came down from his high horse. Immediately he came down, taking advantage of that place of grace where he had been elevated to. It takes humility for us to be able to humble ourselves despite our limitations and present ourselves to God the way we are. The fact of the matter is that when you come to Jesus, you need to come as you are, as open-minded as you possibly can be. Don't try to hide anything. Don't try to color anything. Don't try to defend anything. Don't try to adjudge anything by your own self. Come the way you are and encounter Him the way you want to encounter Him. And you see the beautiful thing about encounter, when Jesus told Zacchaeus, He said, for today I must die. Salvation has come into your house. Zacchaeus, come down, for today salvation has come into your house. He was ready for him. And Zacchaeus took advantage of that opportunity to be able to enter into redemption. And it was not just him that got saved, even his entire household got redemption. So what kind of high horse have you placed yourself? A position where you think that, you are so elevated up there and you are trying to encounter God, but at the same time, it seems as if you are not willing and ready to be open, to be honest, and to submit all of your limitations to His feet. If you want to have a genuine encounter with Jesus, then you must come down from your high horse. You must be open enough to be able to have that encounter. God does not want any man to perish. It's not in His agenda. And every avenue He gets, He's always ensuring that He encounters us one by one. And you must also know that an encounter is not a one-time experience. It's a continuous experience. It's a continuous experience. And as we continue to encounter Him and walk with Him, we will continue to experience Him even the more. so that we can see the various dimensions in which God wants us to be elevated to. I want you to also know that God knows your name personally. When Jesus got to the tree, that sycamore tree, he called out Zacchaeus. I'm sure Zacchaeus was like, what? He knows my name? I don't even know this man. I've only been hearing about him. Yet Jesus knew his name. Jesus knew where he was coming from. Jesus knew his shortcomings. He just needed Zacchaeus to own up, to be ready, to be willing to enter into the next agenda that God had for his life. So if you are looking at your own journey and you are looking to have an encounter with God, you have to understand that he knows you by name. He knows where you are at right now. He knows those errors you have made. He even knows the things that you have done well. Yet he wants to encounter you day by day so that you will grow into the new dimension that he's taking you to. A lot of people believe that they have already encountered Christ, and yet they are still living in the shadows of their past. They are still living in their old characters, old behavior, old beliefs, old way of life, old opinions, the traditions of men transferred to them from their generations, from their parents, from the society, all of these things. If indeed you have encountered the Lord, you must watch out that an encounter counteracts. An encounter does not leave you where it met you. If the encounter is true and the encounter was successful, you will not be where you were met. Zacchaeus was met on the sycamore tree, but he was not left there. An encounter made him to be able to own up and say, all of the things I've taken, all of the things I've done, I must make sure that I recompense people. He was able to own up to all of these errors. And I bet you that from that day onwards, Zacchaeus became a different person altogether. So if you have been looking at how you are going to encounter God, you have an opportunity again today. You may have had an encounter in the past. You may have had an encounter in the past, but it was not a totally successful one because it still left you dry. You still feel dry in your heart and you have not been able to actually move in the ladder with God. Take advantage of His grace. It's always available. And today is even another opportunity of you to take advantage of His grace. This is grace, calling out to you, letting you know that you can get that encounter. So in this video, I have shared with you 4 steps through which you can have a genuine encounter with the Lord. And the first one is that you must be able to have a heart that hungers and thirsts for God. And secondly, you must be able to separate yourself from the crowd, move away completely from the crowd. In the crowd, you will not be able to get any benefits. The third point is that you must take advantage of the grace of God. The grace of God is always available for you. And lastly, I want you to know that for you to be able to have a genuine encounter with the Lord, you must come as you are. Be open enough to come as you are. Don't try to hide yourself because God already knows you and He knows you personally by name. Have you been blessed today? If indeed you have, I want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel where you'll be getting more videos that would edify you and make you a better believer and a better person in life.